In the last video, we were working on the sub 3K budget work truck project, but we no longer have that truck. Long story short, the previous owner bought it back from me. He was originally moving to Vegas. It was his first car. He ended up not going. He asked to buy it back. I sold it back to him at cost of parts, and I ended up buying this 2013 Chrysler 200 Touring. So this is going to be our new project build. I should have been a fishing YouTuber. So this is our new sub $3,000 daily driver budget project. It's a 2013 Chrysler 200 Touring. And as you can see, we got some front end damage where it hit a deer. The airbag was deployed. Whenever I went and test drove this car, it had no shake in it, drove perfectly straight. The brakes were a little soft and the struts were making a lot of noise. So today we're going to be replacing the struts. We're going to do front brakes at the same time. I'm also going to do a ball joint on the driver's side. So I paid $2,500 for this car. I bought it from the insurance company. It does not have a salvage title. It has a regular title. We're going to fix some minor issues. As you can see, the interior's in pretty good shape. The whole car is in pretty good shape besides the front fender and a little bit of the driver's side door. Overall, for $2,500, this car drove excellent. I actually drove it back on the highway at 75, no issues at all besides the struts making some clicking noises. So we're going to go ahead and get these struts on, so stay tuned. So far, I paid $2,500 for the car. I got the 2 struts and 2 sway bar links for $250, and I got front and back brakes at $30 online as well. So if my math is correct, we got $27.80 in the car. I also know that I need a rear passenger side rotor, and that's going to be another $35. And I also bought a tub of brake fluid for like $10. Unofficial merch. Nice Harbor Freight glass and a little sticker. Alright, actually doesn't look too bad under here. I was afraid it's going to be beat up, but it's not really. We just got to do the strut. I got brake pads. Everything looks alright. So we're going to go ahead and get this caliper off and start getting the strut off. We're also going to replace this controller. Let's get to it. And we're also going to be doing 1 lug stud on both sides. So after I got the wheel off here, the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and remove this brake caliper. Just 2 quick bolts, and then use a screwdriver to go ahead and pry that off. And I'm going to use a zip tie to hang it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the passenger side just because the video was kind of hard to see from the other one. I did a little bit better job of filming. So the first thing we're going to do here now, after we got the caliper removed, is we're going to go ahead and remove the caliper bracket. It's also 2 bolts, I believe 18 millimeter. We're going to go ahead and break these loose and pop this bracket off so we can move this rotor out of the way. Once we got this all out of the way, I'm going to go rotate the wheel so we can get the stud out. You want the missing stud to be about 5 o'clock. That's the best place to get it in from behind. So on this side I had a broken stud and not just a missing one, so I'm going to go ahead and tap this out with a hammer and we'll put the new one in. So the way I'm going to press in this wheel stud is I'm going to go ahead and get the new stud in, tap it where it holds it in place, and then I'm going to get a bunch of washers and the actual lug nut, put it on there, use the impact to get it most of the way in, then hand tighten and press it in that way. That way I don't have to worry about trying to get a punch back there and hitting things and everything else. It's just the way I do it. So as you can see here, I have the washers on there, I have the lug nut on there. I'm just going to grab the impact, Throw it on here, drive it as far as it'll go, and then I'll use a big ratchet to bring it in the rest of the way. And then I'll do the final tightening with the breaker bar when I put the tire back on, and it'll go ahead and press itself in. Now I'll go ahead and pull the lug nut off with all the washers, and we're good to go. So next we're going to go ahead and loosen up these strut bolts up top. We're not going to take them all the way off. We're just going to loosen them up a little bit to make everything easier to get out. Next, I'm going to use the breaker bar while everything's still together to go ahead and break loose these two big bolts that are on the bottom of the strut that go into the knuckle. Here I'm removing the brake line bracket from the top of the strut. I want to make sure you know to do that before you remove the strut bolts. So next was probably the biggest pain on doing this on this side was removing the sway bar links. You may have to get a pair of vice grips and put on the back side because they will spin, and these were really seized on there pretty hard. I actually ended up just cutting them off on the top bolt because it kept spinning and I couldn't break it loose. I couldn't get enough torque on it because of the location. Now we're going to go ahead and finally remove these two large bolts at the bottom of the strut using the impact, and then just punch them out with the hammer. And now I'm just removing the nuts from the top of the strut, and then I'm going to go ahead and tap the strut out and get it out of the way. So this is where I had to cut off the bottom bolt for the sway bar link because there was just no way to get in there to get enough torque on it to get it off. So I went ahead and cut it off with a cutoff wheel and moved on. And of course this was after about 30-45 minutes of fighting with it. So now we go ahead and do everything in reverse, starting with the sway bar link. We're going to go ahead and install the bottom bolt of it to the sway bar. Next we're going to go ahead and install the new strut. I like to put the bolts in the top and then put the nuts on loosely and just let it hang loose. Next, I'll get the two large bolts put in at the bottom of the strut to hold everything in place. But I'm not going to tighten them up yet, just put the nuts on there and knock the bolts in just to hold everything. So once everything's lined up like it was originally with on this one it had the bottom bolt was pressed all the way in. Once that's all aligned, I'll go ahead and grab the impact and snug them up. I'm not going to finish tightening them yet. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install the bracket that holds the brake line. After fully installing the sway bar link, I did tighten up those two bottom large bolts on the strut. Next, we're going to go ahead and reinstall the rotor, and then we're going to go ahead and get our caliper bracket back on, our caliper, our new brakes, and that'll be the last step. So here I'm tightening up the caliper bracket. I did use thread locker on both bolts. And I just use electric ratchet just to get it tight. Then I go back over it with a large ratchet to make sure they're torqued. Next, I use a large C-clamp to compress the caliper. This is how I do it. Some people have the actual tool. This works. Never had a problem with it. Then lastly, we're going to go ahead and fit our caliper back on. We did put new brakes in here. So we'll do our two caliper bolts. Again, I'll use an electric ratchet to tighten them, and then do a final tightening with the ratchet itself. Then I'm going to do the final tightening on the top bolts for the strut. Same thing, use the impact, and then I'm going to use the ratchet so I can feel how tight they are and make sure they're to a torque that I feel comfortable with. Then finally throw our tire back on, tighten them up with the impact, drop the car down, and then do a final tightening with the breaker bar. As always, thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you're not subscribed, you want to see more projects like this getting completed, then go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I still need to do the back brakes, and I also got a couple other electrical issues I got to fix on this car, so you'll see that in part 2. Thanks for watching.